You know those moments when someone asks, "What's the best sci-fi book you've ever read?" And your brain immediately panics because how do you pick one? It's like the film Sophie's Choice. Okay, I'm being slightly dramatic, but still, it's a cruel question. So today I've decided to cheat. I'm not going to give you one book. I'm giving you 20, the 20 best sci-fi books I've ever read so far. These are the ones that rewired my brain, ruined other books for me, or made me stare at the wall afterwards questioning my life choices. You know, the classics. And yes, some of these choices will be controversial. Some of you are going to yell at me in the comments. Some of you will be delighted, and at least one of you will scream, "Where is insert book?" And honestly, maybe I just haven't read it. Maybe I'm saving it for a future video. Or maybe it's just terrible. Who's to say? Either way, grab a drink, settle in, and let's talk about the novels that shaped my sci-fi brain. These are ranked from most loved to most loved, counting down. At number 20, we have Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card. Speaker for the Dead is the direct sequel to Ender's Game, but it's one of those sequels that feels less like book 2 and more like someone quietly swapped the entire genre on you when you weren't looking, and somehow it works brilliantly. Published in 1986, it jumps decades into the future and gives us an older, wiser, far more haunted Ender Wiggin. And honestly, I love this version of Ender. He's not the prodigy anymore, he's dealing with guilt, responsibility, and the messy weight of being human. What really hooks me though are the philosophical debates running through the whole story. This is a book that asks uncomfortable questions about truth, empathy, and whether understanding other species means reshaping yourself in the process. And the alien life cycle of the Pequeninos is one of the most imaginative, strange, and almost ritualistic biological systems I've ever read in sci-fi. It's thoughtful, emotional, weird, and utterly unforgettable. A totally worthy start to this list. Up next at number 19 is The Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe. This is one of those rare sci-fi masterpieces that feels mythic, poetic, and completely unlike anything else you've ever read. Published across 4 volumes between 1980 and 1983, it's this strange genre-melding fusion of sci-fi, fantasy, theology, philosophy, and whatever Gene Wolfe had for breakfast that day. It's a book that refuses to sit still. I'll be honest, it can be difficult in places. Wolfe writes like he expects you to meet him halfway, or maybe 3/4 of the way, and he hides key details in plain sight. But that's part of why I love it. The deeper you look, the more the whole thing reveals itself through layers of symbolism, unreliable narration, and world building that feels ancient and futuristic at the same time. It's demanding, yes, but absolutely worth the effort. Few books reward rereading like this one, and even fewer feel quite as visionary. Next, we have one of those sci-fi classics that feels strangely timeless, a post-apocalyptic novel that manages to be both hopeful and bleak in the exact same time. It's A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr. Published in 1959, the story follows a monastery trying to preserve scraps of human knowledge after civilization destroys itself, and somehow that simple premise spirals into something vast, darkly funny, tragic, and genuinely profound. What I love most is how the book constantly balances opposites: faith and science, destruction and rebirth, human brilliance, and human stupidity. It's a story that looks thousands of years into our future and still recognizes all our familiar flaws, staring right back at us. And personally, it left me thinking long after I'd finished, wondering whether we as a species can ever collectively break free from our own genetic programming, or whether we're doomed to repeat the same cycles forever. It's haunting, sharp, and quietly devastating. A true classic. At 17 is The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. This is my first real encounter with the mind-bending phenomenon of time dilation, and honestly, it blew my mind. Published in 1974, the story follows William Mandela as he's drafted into an interstellar war where the faster than light travel means soldiers come home to a society that has aged decades or centuries without them. It's one of the most quietly terrifying concepts in sci-fi, and Haldeman executes it with this cold, clinical precision that makes it feel painfully real. What really elevates the book, though, is the sharp commentary on war, drawn directly from Haldeman's own experience fighting in Vietnam. It's not glorified, it's not romantic, it's disorientating, alienating, and often deeply unfair. And that authenticity comes through in a way that makes the whole story relatable and harrowing. It's a brutal, brilliant, beautifully written novel, and a cornerstone of modern sci-fi. At 16, we have Light by M. John Harrison. And yikes, where do I even start with Light? This book is, well, it's an experience. Published in 2002, it's Harrison at his most unhinged genius, tossing you straight into a fractured, neon-soaked universe where three storylines twist around each other like they're trying to escape gravity itself. The first piece of advice: forget everything you think you know about stories needing to, quote, go somewhere in a neat, tidy way. Light isn't that. This is a ride, and if you just let go, stop trying to control it, and free fall into the weirdness, you'll love it. I did. What I admire about it is how it blends hard sci-fi, metaphysics, surrealism, and pure character chaos into something that feels alive. Harrison's prose is jagged and poetic at the same time, and the characters feel like they're carrying entire galaxies of regret and possibility inside them. It's strange, slippery, intoxicating, and absolutely one of the most unique sci-fi novels I've ever read. My new book, Tao Solandis, is now available. Links in the description because, well, of course it is. It's set at the end of time where an ancient AI guards the final stories of the universe. These are 6 interconnected tales of sci-fi with heart, brains, and just a sprinkle of existential dread. So if that sounds like your thing, grab a copy now before the heat death of the universe kills us all. Up next at number 15 is A Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick. This is PKD at his most harrowing, and honestly, that's saying something. Published in 1977, it's this raw, paranoid, semi-autobiographical spiral into addiction, surveillance, and the slow, painful disintegration of identity. It follows Bob Arctor, an undercover narcotics agent who becomes so entangled in his own investigation that he literally ends up spying on himself. What I love about this book is how personal it feels. Dick isn't inventing weirdness for the sake of it. He's writing from experience, from friends he lost, from a world he lived in, and that makes it hit so much harder. The hallucinations, the humour, the tragedy, all of it feels uncomfortably real. It's bleak, darkly funny, deeply human, and easily one of PKD's most emotionally devastating novels. It's not his flashiest work, but in my view, it's maybe his most important. At 14 is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. Le Guin does what she does better than almost anyone, approaching science fiction anthropologically. Published in 1969, it drops you onto the icy world of Gethen, a place where the inhabitants have no fixed gender, and uses that single, brilliantly alien idea to explore identity, politics, culture, and what it truly means to understand someone who is genuinely alien. What I love most is how Le Guin treats this not as a gimmick, but as a lens. Gender becomes a way of reshaping everything: relationships, diplomacy, power, even loneliness. And watching the main character Genly slowly unlearn his assumptions as he bonds with the alien Estraven, it's emotional in that quiet, slow burn way that sneaks up on you. It's thoughtful, intimate, and profoundly human, a masterpiece that proves sci-fi can be just as much about hearts and minds as it is about spaceships. At 13 is a book that is one of the most uniquely structured and uniquely challenging books I've ever read. It's Use of Weapons by Iain M. Banks. Published in 1990, Use of Weapons is Banks at his most experimental. 2 timelines, one moving forward and one moving backward, both orbiting the damaged, complicated life of Zakalwe. The premise is pure dark culture. Zakalwe is hired to solve political crises across the galaxy, usually through manipulation or violence, and each mission reveals a little more of who he really is. It is a difficult read. You can't coast through this one, you have to trust Banks even when the structure feels deliberately disorientating. But when it all snaps into place, it becomes one of the most rewarding reads in science fiction. And that ending, a gut punch like no other book I've ever read. Clever, brutal, darkly funny, and completely unforgettable. At number 12 is a book that, in my opinion, is cyber noir at its absolute best. It's Altered Carbon by Richard K. Morgan. Published in 2002, Altered Carbon grabs you immediately and never lets go. The world building is razor sharp, digitized consciousness, body swapping sleeves, immortality for the rich, just killer concept after killer concept. The premise is peak cyber noir. Takashi Kovacs, an ex-envoy soldier, is brought back in a new body to solve the murder of a man who's still alive. Classic noir setup, but loaded with existential dread and future tech. The characters all feel alive, damaged, dangerous, or all three. And what I love most is how engaging it is. Stylish, fast, twisty, and incredibly violent. Honestly, one of the most brutal books I've ever read, and I love it. Not sure what that says about me, but hey. It's slick, atmospheric, savage, and a true sci-fi thriller landmark. At number 11 is Schild's Ladder by Greg Egan, probably the hardest sci-fi novel you'll ever read. At least until you pick up another Greg Egan novel. Published in 2002, Schild's Ladder throws you headfirst into quantum physics, exotic vacuum states, and mathematical concepts so intense that by the end I genuinely felt like I'd leveled up my IQ. Maybe only slightly, but still. The story follows a physics experiment that accidentally creates a new kind of vacuum, a perfect universe that begins expanding and consuming our own at half the speed of light. Instead of treating it as pure apocalypse, Egan asks a stranger question. What if this new universe is actually better, more elegant, more alive? The result is a philosophical and scientific clash between those who want to understand the nova vacuum and those who desperately want to destroy it. Bold, cerebral, and uncompromisingly hard sci-fi. Not easy, but absolutely unforgettable. In 10th place is one of those books that reminds you just how wild hard sci-fi can get, and how emotional it can be at the same time. It's Tau Zero by Poul Anderson. Published in 1970, Tau Zero is, on the surface, about a starship crew trying to reach another star system, but after a catastrophic event, they can't slow down at all. Their spacecraft drive just keeps accelerating closer and closer to the speed of light, which means time dilation goes from interesting physics problem to we might literally outlive the universe. What I love about this book is how it mixes incredibly grounded hard science, relativity, cosmology, and the physics of near-light travel with very human drama. Anderson doesn't treat the crew like equations, he shows how people break, adapt, cling to hope, and find meaning while racing toward the end of time. It's bold, fascinating, surprisingly emotional, and features one of the most mind-melting final acts in sci-fi history. At number 9 we have 1984 by George Orwell, a book that doesn't just stay with you, it rewires how you see the world. When I first read it, it felt like I'd truly opened my eyes for the first time, seeing things not as I wanted them to be, but as they really are. Published in 1949, Orwell's vision of surveillance, propaganda, and the systematic destruction of truth is so precise, so plausible, that parts of it barely feel like fiction anymore. It's also one of the most emotionally devastating books you'll ever read, and it needs to be. The power of 1984 comes from its unflinching willingness to follow oppression to its cold, logical endpoint. The heartbreak, the despair, the loss of self. It's all essential to the message Orwell delivers. It's bleak, brilliant, terrifying, and absolutely essential reading. At 8 we have Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. It's Clarke at his most concept-driven, and that's exactly why I love it. Like much of Clarke's work, the characters aren't there to dominate the story, they're there to explore the ideas, and in this case the idea is spectacular. Published in 1973, Rendezvous with Rama sees a vast cylindrical starship drift through our solar system, utterly indifferent to us, and humanity sends a team to investigate before it slingshots away forever. What keeps me coming back to Clarke is that sense of cosmic awe, that feeling of brushing up against something so old, so advanced, so unconcerned with humanity that it changes your perspective just by it existing. Rama isn't a villain or a mystery box to solve, it's a cathedral of engineering, a wandering ecosystem, a glimpse into an alien intelligence so far beyond us we can barely interpret the decor. It's wondrous, quiet, thoughtful, and still one of the purest sense of wonder novels in sci-fi. At number 7 is the original alien invasion story, and honestly, no one has surpassed it yet. It's The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. The War of the Worlds was published in 1898, and what blows my mind is how fresh it still feels today. Mysterious cylinders land across England, and inside are Martians armed with heat rays and towering tripod war machines. Humanity, completely unprepared, is swept aside almost instantly. Wells wasn't just imagining aliens, he was imagining what happens when humanity is forced to confront the fact that we're not the apex species. The sense of scale, the helplessness, the speed at which civilization collapses, it's still chilling. It's sharp, prophetic, atmospheric, and an absolute cornerstone of science fiction. The blueprint for every invasion story that followed, and still the best. At number 6 is a book that feels like future mythology, the kind of story that rewires your sense of time and place and leaves you staring upward, wondering what might be out there, and what came before us. It's 2001. A Space Odyssey. Published in 1968 alongside Kubrick's film, 2001: A Space Odyssey isn't just the pinnacle of cinema, it's a pinnacle of storytelling. The premise centres on humanity's encounter with a mysterious alien monolith, a catalyst for our evolution, discovered both on the moon and later near Jupiter. Side note, it's Saturn in the film. What follows is a journey into deep space, deep consciousness, and ultimately beyond anything that fits neatly into language. Clarke turns cosmic mystery into something almost spiritual. What I love is the sense of wonder this instills, vast, unsettling, and beautiful, while quietly reminding us just how small we really are. It's haunting, visionary, and still unlike anything else in sci-fi. Okay, into the top 5. At 5 is a book, well, 2 books, 1 story, that make up one of the most ambitious duologies in modern sci-fi. It's Ilium / Olympos by Dan Simmons. Honestly, only Dan Simmons could have written something this wild. Published between 2003 and 2005, the premise of the story alone sounds like a fever dream. The Trojan War is being reenacted on Mars, overseen by advanced post-human gods, while elsewhere, Earth has fallen into strange decline and a group of sentient robots journey across the solar system, debating Shakespeare and Proust. And somehow, all of this fits together. What I love about these books is just how fearlessly Simmons blends genres. Epic poetry, quantum physics, space opera, post-human speculation, literary criticism, it's all in there. It feels mythic and operatic, but also playful and deeply imaginative. It's vast, weird, energetic, and absolutely packed with ideas. A roller coaster of high-concept storytelling that rewards you on every single page. At number 4 is a modern sci-fi classic and one of the most gripping space operas ever written. It's Revelation Space by Alastair Reynolds. Published in the year 2000, Revelation Space is the book that announced Reynolds as a major force in the new space opera genre, and honestly, it still hits just as hard today. The premise follows 3 converging storylines: an archaeologist uncovering the mysterious extinction of an ancient alien race, a starship crew on a desperate mission with a heavily armed, half-derelict light hugger, and a woman trying to survive a plague-like nanotech infection. As their paths collide, a much bigger, darker truth emerges about the galaxy and about humanity's place in it. What I love about this book is the atmosphere. Reynolds blends hard sci-fi with gothic, almost horror-like tension, vast dead civilizations, cold megastructures, creepy cybernetics, and enormous, unsettling mysteries. It feels lived in, grimy, and absolutely huge in scope. It's intelligent, brooding, cinematic, and full of that deliciously dark sense of cosmic dread. At number 3 is, in my opinion, one of the most breathtakingly ambitious space operas ever written, and it still feels ahead of its time. It's A Fire Upon the Deep by Vernor Vinge. Published in 1992, the premise revolves around Vinge's incredible idea of the zones of thought, regions of the galaxy where physics and therefore intelligence and technology work differently. At the top is the Transcend, home to godlike AIs, and the bottom is the Slow Zone, where tragically for us, humans live. The story kicks off when a research team accidentally unleashes a malevolent superintelligence, sending the galaxy into panic. Meanwhile, 2 children crash land on a medieval world populated by the Tynes, one of the most imaginative alien species in sci-fi, pack-based multi-bodied, shared consciousness creatures. What I love about this book is the sheer scope of it. Vinge blends blistering high-tech action with intimate emotional storytelling and mind-stretching physics. It's vast, visionary, and utterly exhilarating. One of the greatest space operas ever written. Full stop. At number 2 is one of the foundational pillars of science fiction. Dune by Frank Herbert. It's not just a classic, it's iconic, with good reason. Published in 1965, the premise follows young Poul Atreides as he arrives on the desert planet Arrakis, the only source of the spice melange, the most valuable substance in the universe. Political betrayal, ecological mystery, and religious prophecy, and the rise of a messianic figure all collide as Poul navigates destiny, power, and the terrifying consequences of both. What I love about Dune is how many layers it contains. It's a political thriller, a philosophical exploration of power, a study of ecology and empire, and an intimate character story all at once. Herbert creates a universe that feels ancient, alive, and morally complex. Nothing is simple, and every action echoes across generations. Reading Dune feels like encountering a myth that's always been waiting for you. It's grand, intense, and visionary. So, my number 1 sci-fi book of all time is one of those rare books that doesn't just tell a story. It creates a whole mythology you feel like you've stumbled into by accident. It's Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Published in 1989, the premise is brilliant. 7 pilgrims journey to the time tombs on the planet Hyperion, each carrying their own secrets, traumas, and motives. Along the way, they share their stories in a structure inspired by the Canterbury Tales, and each tale is so distinct in voice, style, and genre that it feels like reading 7 incredible novellas woven into one masterpiece. And then there's the Shrike, a terrifying, time-warping entity, equal parts executioner, deity, and cosmic horror. The mystery surrounding it gives the whole book its electric tension. What I love most is how Hyperion blends everything I love about sci-fi: hard science, deep philosophy, religious symbolism, poetic writing, and raw emotional storytelling. It's tragic, thrilling, epic, intimate, somehow all at once. Each pilgrimage tale hits differently, but together they form something genuinely transcendent. This book holds a special place in my heart, and I think it always will. I'm not sure anything will ever knock it off the #1 spot, but I'll definitely have fun trying. It's mythic, moving, awe-inspiring, the perfect sci-fi novel, in my opinion. And there you have it, my 20 best sci-fi books I've ever read, or at least the best I've ever read so far. If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you, genuinely. These books shaped how I think, how I write, and honestly, how I see the universe, so getting to share them with you is always a joy. Let me know in the comments which of these you've read, which ones you disagree with, and of course which books you think should have made the list. I'm always looking for my next obsession, so who knows, maybe one of your recommendations will eventually dethrone Hyperion. Unlikely, but possibly. If you enjoyed this video and want more juicy sci-fi goodness, check out this next video where I explore 5 hopeful sci-fi that you need to read.